And we're going to start our city council meeting. I'll ask everyone to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The roll, please.
Marquez.
Present.
Kenny.
Here.
Clistic.
Here.
Belzak.
Here.
McIver.
Here.
Shower.
Here.
Vaughn.
Here.
7 present.
We have a quorum. The next item on the agenda is questions, comments, and announcements of a general nature. This time is for individuals who cannot stay through the whole meeting but would like to address the City Council on any item. And if you are here strictly for the Sterling Bay issue, I ask you to hold your comments till later when we discuss that issue. Is anyone in the audience wanting to speak to the Council about other issues? Okay, let's move on to the approval of the minutes of August 6, 2018. Do I have a motion to approve? Alderman Shower, seconded by Alderman Belzak. Any additions or deletions to the minutes? Then the roll, please.
Shower.
Aye.
Belzak.
Aye.
Clistic.
Aye.
Kenny.
Abstain.
Marquez.
Aye.
McIver.
Aye.
Vaughn.
Aye.
6 ayes and 1 abstention.
The next item is receiving of communications. Do any of the aldermen have communications to share?
Mayor, I have several communications about this project and a couple other things, but I'll just send them over to the clerk to save time here this evening.
All righty. For the record?
For the record, I'll get them in, but it just won't be.
I think we've all been in the same situation, so I don't know if it would be necessary to,
Right.
yeah. But at any rate, let's move on to the mayor's report. I have a proclamation for Arts DuPage Month, and I'd like to read this proclamation. Whereas the arts, culture, and humanities are the embodiment of all things beautiful and entertaining in the world, the enduring record of human achievement, and whereas the arts, culture, and humanities enhance every aspect of life in the city of Darien, improving our economy, enriching our civic life, driving tourism, and exerting a profound positive influence on the education of our children. And whereas arts education research shows that the arts help to foster discipline, creativity, imagination, self-expression, and problem-solving skills, while also helping to develop a heightened appreciation of beauty and cross-cultural understanding. And whereas we use the humanities, which is history, literature, philosophy, to explore what it means to be human. And whereas the arts, culture, and humanities play a unique, intrinsically valuable role in the lives of our families and our country, and whereas the month of October has been recognized as Arts DuPage Month by Arts DuPage and the arts and cultural organizations in all communities within DuPage County, now therefore I, Kathleen Weaver, Mayor of the City of Darien, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2018 as Arts DuPage Month and call upon all citizens to celebrate and promote the arts and culture in DuPage County. Do we have a representative from the Arts DuPage Council to accept this proclamation?
If you can stay a little bit further. I just
Am I
text.
getting,
Yeah.
I'm echoing?
Just a little closer.
Yeah,
that's all.
okay. I thought we had a representative from Arts DuPage Council.
Okay. We'll mail it.
Okay, so we'll make sure we get that to our representatives there. Also, under the mayor's report, I wanted to, if you are on our City of Darien Direct Connect program, you are aware of the Sterigenics issue that is occurring in Willowbrook. And if you are on Direct Connect, you are aware of a letter that I, along with numerous elected officials, namely Senator John Curran, Representative Jim Durkin, Mayor Frank Trilla, myself, Dan Cronin, and the 3 representatives from DuPage County Board, Gary Hart, Gary Grasso, and Brian Krajewski. We sent a letter on August 31st to Kathleen Hoffman with Sterigenics asking them to shut down their operation until adequate testing could be done to safeguard and make sure our community is safe from the product that they're using to clean medical equipment. The product is called ethylene oxide. In the meantime, we received on September 3rd a response from Sterigenics. And in the response to all of us signatories on the letter of August 31st, we received Sterigenics' explanation of they cannot shut down at this point because in order to do the testing to make sure the facility is safe, they need to stay open to do the testing. So what they're going to do is they plan on bringing in a third party who is not connected to them or to anyone else, the EPA, to test and validate their control systems within the next week, to work to make sure that the equipment and their facility is safe. And they're hoping that the Illinois EPA and the U.S. EPA participate in this testing along with their third-party administrator. But if they're not, they will do the testing a second time with the EPA members present to guarantee and ensure that their facility is safe. They feel that they are such a necessary entity to the medical field, the medical care field. The equipment that many people use when you go to see your doctor, MRIs, CT scans, all of those equipment are cleaned by this ethylene oxide, according to Sterigenics. And since that letter came out, we also received a notice from the Illinois Department of Public Health. Frank Trilla received a letter from the Illinois Department of Health telling him, this letter was dated August 31st also, telling Mayor Trilla that they were notified by the Agency of Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. That was the acronym that was at the meeting Wednesday night, the ATSDR, that they have sent a message. They sent a message to the Illinois Department of Health to do some testing of the cancers in the area to see if there's any connection to the ethylene oxide that is being used at the Sterigenics facility. So you are up to date on what is going on this issue. We are sure that testing within the next week is going to be done at the facility, and I recommend that you go to the Village of Willowbrook's website. We're not going to put any information on except to tell you to contact or look at the Village of Willowbrook's website because they have the most up-to-date information on the issue, and so you can follow what's going on the Village of Willowbrook. If you are not aware of this issue, please go there to read all of the updates on their website. So you, everyone in the audience and the viewing audience, are up to date on the Sterigenics. So as you can see, it's an ongoing issue that we will be watching carefully for the benefit of our residents and all the residents in our community. Let's move on to the City Clerk's report.
No report this evening, Madam Mayor.
Let's move on to the City Administrator's report.
No report, Mayor Weaver, thank you.
Let's move on to the Department Head information and questions. Dan, do you have a report for us?
No report this evening, Madam Mayor.
Chief Thomas, do you have a report?
No report this evening.
Do any of the aldermen have questions for the department heads? Alderman McIver?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Dan, I know maybe we talked about this before, but when did they change the speed limit on Plainfield between heading east from Lamont Road to basically Manning?
I would say within the last month. I know we weren't informed of it, but I
Yeah.
did notice that myself. It's down to 35.
It's 35, so
Correct.
yeah, I
Where
just
is
wanna-
it? Where is that, Alderman McIver?
Basically from the light all the way to Lamont Road, it's gone from 40 miles an hour to 35 miles
From
an hour.
the light at Lakeview?
The light, no, right here.
Manning.
Oh, the new light.
Yes.
At Manning.
It's-
At Manning.
That's all
From
the way up
Manning to
oh my
Lamont
gosh.
Road. Basically, when it becomes single lane in each direction, is no longer 40 miles an hour. It's just warning everybody that it's down to 35 miles an hour. And I was just curious because I don't remember hearing anything about it.
I can follow up with Chris Snyder too. And I did notice that they also put up one of those larger signs that has the flashing speed,
Right.
speed
Right.
limit signs also.
That's their way of saying, hello, we changed this
I
other way.
think so. I'm not sure what they were trying to initiate, but I think it's something to do with the school zone over there too. I know
Yeah,
that's
but
been
I think it's,
controversial.
yeah. So it's good for everyone to take note of that speed limit has changed officially.
Okay. Alderman Clistic?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a quick question. Would anyone be interested in a resolution for independent testing that we would test within our area? If you look at what was done in the study, they did it separately. I know we're testing at the facility, but I don't know if a lot of people know, but there's a 200-day half-life for this stuff. So what's in the air has already been there for, say, 100 days. So I'm just putting a question out there, a resolution potentially maybe next week, if anyone would be interested in looking at having our independent testing, especially within like Mark DeLay, when my daughter goes to school, Hinsdale South. I think it's important that we have our own opinion, or at least there's some separate testing versus just in Willowbrook, they can hold the information they want or not give. Whereas if we do it ourselves, we have someone look at it. It's just a resolution I'm just throwing out there for anyone.
I think it might be premature considering the testing that's going to be going on, and especially with the Illinois Department of Health actually doing some research on the cancers that are in the area already. That should be a very interesting study when that comes out. Anyone else's thoughts?
No, I like the idea because maybe we do at a location, even at City Hall or something, just to get an idea of, how far that toxin potentially has traveled, or I don't know if that puts us in a better position should something come up in the future, as far as having some kind of ability for residents to have, go back to the company if it's shown that they have, it indeed
Really
is
is
causing,
correct.
is a carcinogen. So, I would support that idea. I don't know what the cost would be to do that, but.
Yeah, it's just discussion, just getting everyone's opinion on that.
I think it's a great idea, considering there was a report from 2014 that showed like the highest risk of cancer and it moved over into Darien right on my block. So I'm for that. I think the community's for that. I think it'll put a lot of peace in a lot of folks' minds to just know where they stand, where we stand as leaders in the community, to have independent testing in our neighborhood.
Can we find out what the cost would be to do that, or?
Well, yeah, we could find the cost. We could contact the Illinois EPA, have them come out and maybe talk to the council too. Just obviously this is not something we do often.
Right.
And if we're going to specifically do something that duplicates what somebody did, I don't know that the council would want to do that. And I think if everybody has an understanding really specifically of what is coming up for the testing, that might suffice, for the council. And if not, then we would get a company that could do some type of study. But again, I don't know the scope of the study. I understand a bit of what you're talking about, Sylvia, but not really what we're looking for.
Right.
In any study, there's got to be some scope of service, and I don't know if we're looking for again, because I think what the mayor mentioned is really two studies going on. One is what's happening now in the air, and then one is what effect it might have had already. So I'm not sure what we're looking at.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at like a location proximity. Is there if they're testing just at that particular location, where maybe an understanding of what maybe the scope of their testing and where their testing locations
The
are.
radius.
I think that
radius.
might be just so the council understands the testing going on before.
Yeah.
That might be helpful.
Right. I think that would be helpful.
What is that? What are we going to do?
To get a better idea of, you mentioned a couple different tests going on, and find out exactly what these tests will be, the radius of the test. Because if you look at the map that was already on there, you could see the area, the overview of the areas expands past Willowbrook.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some information or testing, and if the Illinois EPA is going already to look at the part of the area in Darien, would that suffice for the council?
Well, the testing that Sterigenics is talking about is only on their facility. It's not going to be showing anything outside of their facility. So,
Well, I recall on the one of the maps I saw, they did show a radius of where, I forget what they call that radius. But if, I think what I'm hearing is the council maybe wants to really understand how far that went and the impact it might have on areas.
so we should find out who did that study. You said 2014?
Yeah, that was
We should probably find out who did that
NATA
study and have a follow-up on that.
Yeah, a follow-up to that, and just to make, again, I'll talk to the administrator in Willowbrook just to make sure that we are really clear on what testing is going on. Because if the letter you just read, Mayor, might include some of those areas. If they're looking where cancer, if they're trying to determine where
the Department of Health is.
The Department of Health.
Well, the Department of Health is going to take all of the cancers that have occurred or are occurring in this area and then analyze them if there's a connection
Well,
between.
that area is,
yeah.
I think, what I'm hearing.
Right.
What is that area? And I think it's been identified, but what I'm thinking of, if either Illinois Department of Health, if they're going to be looking at that, they probably have an area outlined already.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
if that's already covering us, we should probably understand that.
And also, from my understanding, that the chemical will stay in the air for 200 up to 200 days for a half-life. So what's already up in the air, you can measure, and it could be zero, but it's already in the atmosphere to a certain extent around, from my understanding. So that's my concern, is that you've already put pollution up there and it's slowly coming down. That's what I'm trying to understand is, okay, we have elementary schools, we have high schools, we have retirement homes, people that are more susceptible, so especially younger kids that breathe in more oxygen. And out that it's I think our responsibility to do due diligence to our
Make sure you're talking it to the microphone.
due diligence to our community and make
Yeah,
sure we're
yeah.
checking and verifying it. That's all.
Okay. Want to do that?
So next meeting we'll bring back information on the scope of that work, and I'll see if there is somebody, and again, Illinois EPA or somebody that could come out maybe and answer maybe these types of questions to the satisfactory of the council, and I guess also in the interim is identify some companies that would do testing.
Alex Messina is the head of the Illinois EPA. He was the gentleman that was at the meeting last Wednesday. So, and Kathy Shep, she did a really good job with the U.S. EPA in speaking. So we might want to contact her too. Let's move on to the Treasurer's Report, and the first item under the agenda is Jason Franklin.
Jason Franklin from Foster and Froster.
Yes, Jason, you want to come forward, and you are our representative from the actuary firm of?
I'm Jason Franklin. I'm with Foster and Foster.
Okay.
Who's been engaged by the Police Pension Board to perform the actuarial calculations for the amounts required for our contributions for the following year to be made. You guys have a copy of the report. He's going to review some of the highlights of the report, and then I assume open it up for if you have some questions as far as how the amounts are determined or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
you know what, Jason, you want to move that podium, just move it. Yeah, it just seems to be.
Yeah.
I
feel better, more comfortable
There you
now.
go. There you go. There you go.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm obviously here tonight to help answer all your questions that you may have about the public, your police pension fund. I know there's a lot of people here tonight. I don't think they're here to listen to me, at least for very long. So I will keep it brief, but again, I'm here to answer any questions that you have, so feel free to let me know if you have any questions.
Well, Jason, I'm sure they would love to hear that they're going to have to pay $2 million out of their pockets for our police pension. So are we getting close to that?
Well, let's flip to page 5 of the report if you have that in front of you. This is just a brief summary of the report. In the middle of the page, I have the city's recommended contribution, and as of 5/1/2017, and that would be the amount that's being collected in this current fiscal year, the city's recommended contribution was $1,618,878. So as of 5/1/2018, so with our most recent valuation after reflecting what happened in that prior year, the recommended contribution increased to $1,714,350. So that was an increase of about $96,000. a couple things. You'll notice that I call it the recommended contribution. This is the amount that we think needs to be paid to fund the plan on an actuarially sound basis. The state of Illinois says you can contribute less than that. Based on our calculations, the statutory minimum contribution is about $1.45 million. So it's significantly less than what we're reporting here. However, funding on that lower basis is very similar to having a credit card bill of about $1,000. With and if your interest on that credit is about $100 per month, and you're only paying $80. So that is really why we're recommending the higher amount, because we're funding on a more financially sound basis. I don't think many people would maintain a credit in their personal finances, would maintain a credit card and not even pay the monthly interest. And that's what we're trying to avoid here. So that's why we have this recommended contribution that's higher, because it's more sound, even though the state of Illinois, from a statutorial perspective, says that you can contribute less. Just briefly on why the contribution increased, there's really two main drivers for that. One, you've probably heard of the pension ramp that's in the state of Illinois. The pension contributions are designed to increase each year, and about $50,000 of that increase is by design. It's the pension ramp that you're on, so $50,000, that's the kind of increase we would expect every single year. The other part of that is the investment returns. For the year, it was 7%, right about 7%, which is the assumption that we have. However, we smooth investment gains and losses over a 5-year period, and in prior years, we had losses. So on a smooth basis, our return was only 5.69%, and our assumption was 7%. When the assets earn less money than what we were expecting, the contribution requirement goes up. So those are really the two main drivers to the increase in the contribution requirement. On page 9, a couple other statistics that people find useful. The bottom two rows here, the unfunded liability in the plan. Last year it was $19,137,000. And this year it increased to $19.5 million. So an increase of about $400,000 in the unfunded liability. And the unfunded liability is the amount by which your liabilities exceed the assets that are in the plan. So that's really what that unfunded liability is currently, is about $19.5 million. And finally, the funded ratio for the plan. Last year it was 58.4%. It increased a little bit this year to 59%. So we have a larger percentage of the total amount that we need by about 0.6%. But on like I said already, on an unfunded liability basis, our unfunded liability did increase because of the total assets increased as well, but not by quite as much as what the liabilities increased during the year. So those are the highlights of the report. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
What is your average assumption for a police officer retiring, and what do you think they're going to be paying out in benefits between that and a spouse?
So the average retirement age, there's not necessarily one average retirement age. It really depends on what age you're at. But for someone who's age 45, we assume that they're going to average retirement around age 54. So the average retirement age is about 54. The average life expectancy for a male is about 81 years old, and a female is about 84, based on some mortality tables that are a little bit old at this point. But so we're roughly, from 54 to 84, around 30 years of payments that we expect the average police officer to get. The average retirement benefit at retirement, is probably, I don't have that stat in front of me, but at retirement, it's probably about 75% 70 to 75% on an average salary around $100,000. So it's probably about $70,000 per year for 30 years. So that would be, $2.1 million over the 30-year career, or 30-year, not career, but 30 years of payments that member would be entitled to.
And you're using an assumption that they're going to pass away at 81, okay?
Well, that's not necessarily the assumption. That's the average life expectancy. So I don't say everyone's going to die at 81.
Right.
I assume everyone's going to...
But you're using that assumption that's the average.
Yes.
And what does that compare nationally to the police?
Well, there's actually a new mortality. There hasn't been a study that has been just for public safety until last week. The Society of Actuaries released an exposure draft, so it's not final, but they did release a public safety only mortality table that we intend to use in future years.
Okay.
And I think based on the little analysis that we've been able to perform so far, we would expect that the life expectancies for police officers are going to be a little bit higher than what we're assuming right now. So
higher than 81?
Yes, on average.
Public safety.
Okay, and does that also take into account when they expect to retire as well?
No, the average... the Society of Actuaries puts out mortality tables. They don't.
That's all it is.
Yes. So what we've used for the average retirement age are tables that have been developed by the Illinois Department of Insurance that looks at average retirement ages for all the police officers in the state of Illinois. So not just Darien, all 15,000 officers or whatever it might be in the state of Illinois, and not only the actives but also the retirees, obviously, is what's going to drive that assumption. So we use tables that have been created by the Department of Insurance to reflect the police population in the state of Illinois.
And you'll pass those out to Darien when you get those? You said you got them out a week ago, correct?
That's the mortality table, yes.
Pass them on out to us?
I don't have that available right now.
But
like I said, it's in an exposure draft currently.
Okay.
So it's not, I wouldn't provide anything until it's final, but I will provide that study, and you can find it in the meantime, the exposure draft, if you're interested, on the Society of Actuaries website.
Alderman Schauer, you were expecting the mortality to be lower?
Correct.
Age?
Yeah, but that's another discussion to go in later on.
Question.
Yes.
Let's say an officer retires at age 54 and receives 75%, $70,000 a year. There's a increase every year. It's a COLA, correct?
That's correct. For Tier 1 people, yes.
For Tier 1. Officer dies at age 60. What percentage of that does the spouse continue?
For a Tier 1 member, if let's say he started at a $70,000 pension, it had increased to $75,000, and then he died, his or her spouse, would be entitled to that same $75,000, but without any cost of living adjustment.
Okay.
Tier 2 benefits have changed. If he was a Tier 2 individual, that $75,000 would be reduced by 1/3, so it would go from 75 down to 50, and then that 50 would be increased by cost of living adjustments going forward.
Is that unique to police officers, pension funds? Because the state of Illinois for teachers, if a teacher dies in retirement, their spouse only gets 50% of the pension amount.
It varies by articles of the Illinois Pension Code, yes.
Okay.
Whether they're Tier 1 or they're Tier 2, if a police officer is married and gets a divorce, and the bottom line, they're entitled to that pension that goes forward, once that police officer dies, the ex-spouse no longer receives it. Is that correct for both 1 and 2?
Well, it's for a police plan, because this is different between police and fire. Article 1 and Tier 1 and Tier 2, I don't believe that matters in this case. But for a police plan, if an officer is married at retirement, his spouse is entitled, he has a spouse who's eligible to receive those benefits. If they're divorced, I believe and we'd have to make sure with an attorney on this, but I believe that that ex-spouse would not be eligible for any pension, but there is also what's called a quildro, a qualified domestic relations order that could potentially give that spouse something, but I think in most cases that spouse would not be entitled to receive a pension after the death of his or her ex-spouse.
Rates on police officer divorce rates are typically higher, aren't they?
I don't have a scientific study, but that seems to be the case.
You said that about 50% of the increase is due to the ramp, and so you anticipate the ramp being $50,000 for the foreseeable future, or is that going to
until
go up as
2040, which is the current year that's in the Illinois pension codes. So I guess we have changed that assumption a little bit over time. So rather than 50,000, we've expect it to be a little bit lower than that, maybe 35 or 40,000. But that pension ramp does continue to go up until 2040, which is, like I said, the year in which is the funding goes to based on what's in Article in the articles of the Illinois Pension Code, Article 3.
So if our investments do better and we meet our goals, we still are going to have to budget for the future, the ramp payment every year.
Potentially, if the returns were good enough to exceed that, then you might have a case in which the pension contribution would not go up. But every year with this system in place, you are starting out in a hole. You need to you need to have a budgeted increase and hope for the best, I guess, in terms of the experience of the plan.
Treasurer Corr?
Yeah, and thank you, Jason, for the presentation. I don't envy your position. You've got to be going through a lot of that, and I'm sure a lot of people see it on TV.
This isn't the first time I've had this same discussion.
Well, me as a resident and a taxpayer, I know we're all concerned about where the dollars are going. Unfortunately, I think the important thing for our residents to know is we really don't have much control over these amounts. This is statutory, so these are the amounts to be provided. The only flexibility we have is whether we pay in 100% of your recommended amount or 90%. As you alluded to, the state will allow us to fund it at 90%, which would be about $1.4 million versus the $1.7 million. As long as I've been treasurer now, the 11 or 12 years, though, I've been recommending we fund it at 100%. As you indicated, we're $19 million that we have unfunded at this point. I guess, Mike, I do have one question to you, though. On page 12, you do reflect the projected unfunded liability. I guess, and Alderman Belzak, this may go to your question, too, as far as that 50,000 ramp. If you look at that table at the top of page 12, it shows that currently we're unfunded by $19.5 million, roughly. And if you look at that amount, really doesn't change between now and 2025. It's still $19,150,000. Before it finally starts dropping. But you see in 2036, it's still $10 million. So that amount has to be made up through higher contributions, and you can see it is really sort of backloaded. My question to you, I never asked you at the police pension meeting. I hadn't thought of it at the time, but we are funding it at 100%. If we were to fund it at 90%, I would assume this unfunded amount would actually increase.
Yes, that's exactly right. So if you were funding the 90%, those scheduled increases, those ramp increases that I talked about would be much larger than the amounts that I've, probably be closer, after a few years, it would be closer to 100,000 than it would be to 50. Yeah. And you're exactly right. If you were to lower your contribution to that 90% level, the projected unfunded liability picture would look a lot worse, because you wouldn't be, you would be ignoring 10% of the liability with dealing with the idea of dealing with it later, in this case 2040, and those amounts would get larger and larger because there would be less money going into the plan. And so with lower assets, you have more unfunded liability and a lower funded ratio.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing, Alderman Belzak, you addressed and Jason mentioned also, we are assuming a 7% return in here. Again, our hands are tied somewhat by the state because the state says the pension fund cannot invest more than 65% in equities. That means 35% has to be in fixed income. Well, fixed income is finally moving up a little bit, but we get excited about 3% return on our fixed income rates now. So the 7% has to be made up by equities, and yet again, the state ties our hands and says that you can't invest as much in equities. So the 7% is still a fairly aggressive return considering the 65-35 that we're allowed. So I guess I compliment the council that you've been willing to fund it at the 100% here, and we've been trying to keep up with it, but unless things change at the state level, we really don't have a lot of control. We can tell Jason, okay, well, assume people are going to die at age 80 instead of 85 or whatever, but you're just sort of playing with numbers. That's people are going to live a certain amount of time, and we don't know. You're just taking your best estimate based on history as far as what we do that. So I guess not that I need to defend Jason, but again, he's sort of the guy the bearer of bad news all the time, and I was in accounting long enough where I was always called doom and gloom, and you're probably in the same position. But I thank you for what you did, and again, council, if you have any other questions,
does anyone else have any questions for Jason? You want to come up to the microphone? Do you want to come up to the microphone? That's one of our Darien residents.
Do people in this pension plan, are they eligible for Social Security?
No.
Generally, no. I guess I don't know specifically in the state or in the city of Darien, but in most cases, police officers and firefighters in the state of Illinois are not eligible for Social Security. I would say the vast majority of them that's the case. But I haven't confirm that in this particular case.
That is the case. That is the case, yes.
Yeah, so it would be very rare that a police officer or firefighter in Illinois would be covered by Social Security. And the police officers are required to contribute 9.91% of their salaries to the pension fund. So they are contributing to the plan as well as the city.
Yeah, yeah.
One other question. Who has the authority to change the pension plan?
The state.
The benefits of the plan are outlined in Article 3 and 4 of the, in this case, Article 3 of the Illinois Pension Code, and that can only be changed by the legislature in Springfield.
And just to address your question, sir, the police do contribute 9.91% of their salary to it. I know we all contribute towards Social Security, but they are contributing 9.91%. But again, we really have no control of the amount going in. Again, if it's important, again, it's something we need to harp on the state if there are any changes to be made.
One clarification.
What percent of salaries, of their salaries, do we contribute? If they do 9.1?
9.91.
9.91. What percent do we?
The total normal costs, so the value of the benefits that are being earned, you're contributing, or the city's contributing 22%. Oh wait, yeah, 22%. The members contribute 9.91. So that, so really, actually, let me back up. So the total normal cost, that's what's being earned by the active police officers. The normal cost is 22.4%. The expected member contributions are 9.91. So from the normal cost perspective, the city's contributing about 12% of their payroll for the active members. What makes the contribution what it is that the city has to contribute 40% of the salaries to reduce and pay down the unfunded liability. So in total, the city's contribution is about 54% of payroll, but 40% of that is going to cover the unfunded liability in the plan.
Okay, one last question. What percentage of the liability is funded?
The funded ratio of the plan, as we discussed a little bit ago, was 59.0%.
Yeah. Which is way ahead of most municipalities for funding their pension plans.
Way ahead of Illinois and Chicago in general.
For sure. Any other questions for Jason?
Thank you, Jason. No.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for appearing.
Yeah. And again, we'll be coming forward to the council with the request to fund the suggested contribution of $1.7 million at a later date. But I just want to give Jason an opportunity to present exactly how that number was developed.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the item B under the Treasurer's Report, Warrant 18-1908. Do you want to review that for us?
Oh, why not? I'm going to have to ask for a pay increase here. This evening, I'm requesting council's approval of warrant number 18-1908, requesting approval of $821,464.78 from the listed funds, payroll for the period ended August 16th in the amount of $261,632.75 for a total to be approved of $1,083,097.53.
Do I have a motion to approve? Alderman Shower, seconded by Alderman Kenny. Any discussion? Then the roll, please.
Shower.
Aye.
Kenny.
Aye.
Clistic.
Aye.
Belzak.
Aye.
Vaughn.
Aye.
McIver.
Aye.
Marquez.
Aye.
7 ayes.
The warrant has been approved. Let's review warrant 18-1909.
Okay, requesting council's approval of warrant number 18-1909 in the amount of $248,176.39 from the listed funds, payroll for the period ended August 30th in the amount of $245,435.47 for a total to be approved of $493,611.86.
Do I have a motion to approve? Alderman Belzak, seconded by Alderman Clistic. Discussion? Then the roll, please.
Belzak.
Aye.
Clistic.
Aye.
Kenny.
Aye.
Marquez.
Aye.
McIver.
Aye.
Shower.
Aye.
Vaughn.
Aye.
7 ayes.
The warrant has been approved. Do you want to review the monthly report?
The monthly report for the 3 months ended July 31st reflect general fund year-to-date revenue $4,716,155, expenditures of $3,350,828, current fund balance of $3,196,644. Water fund year-to-date revenue $2,431,582, expenditures of $1,596,867 for a current balance of $1,865,340. Motor fuel tax fund year-to-date revenue of $141,220, expenditures of $86,252, current balance of $444,407. Water depreciation fund year-to-date revenue $3,443,022, expenditures of $703,189, current balance of $2,853,876, and the capital improvement fund year-to-date revenue of $123,133. Expenditures of $2,410,517 for a current balance of $6,284,662.
Any questions for the treasurer on the monthly report? Go ahead.
Yeah, I do have one other highlight in the cash reserves report, which is at the tail end of the monthly report. If you'll notice, I was able to, we had surplus cash available since we did that bond issue, so I was able to take, and Wintrust Community Bank, we put out a bid for doing CDs, and we did a 12-month CD with them. They had the highest rate. We did $1 million 12-month CD at 2.58% and a 24-month CD with them at a rate of 2.89%. So you'll see that's a little bit of a change, but considering our bond issue was at like 2.9%, so hopefully we're at least offsetting the interest rate on that.
When's the last time we were above 2%? 10 years ago?
If you notice, we haven't been doing the CDs for such a long time. We've been able to do better on our money market. But.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Standing committee reports. Alderman Marquez?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Last Monday, the Municipal Services Committee approved the minutes of the July 23rd, 2018 meeting, and the next meeting of the Municipal Services Committee will be Monday, September 24th, 2018 at 6:30 here in the council chambers.
What date was that?
That's September 24th, 2018, 6:30.
Okay. Alderman Shower?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The minutes from the August 6, 2018 Admin Finance meeting were approved at tonight's meeting and submitted to the clerk's office. And our next Admin Finance meeting is scheduled for Monday, October 1st, 2018 at 6 p.m. in our upstairs meeting room.
And Alderman McIver?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to make sure everyone can hear. The next meeting of the Darien Police Committee is scheduled for Monday, September 17th at 6 p.m. in the Police Department training room across the parking lot, pending agenda items.
Thank you. Let's move to questions, comments, agenda related. This is an opportunity for anyone in the audience to address the council on any of the items that are on the agenda this evening. If you would like to speak to the council, please step forward.
Hi.
I should not forget to mention that we have a 3-minute time limit.
Okay. So, hi, I'm Nettinga. I'm a resident at Darien. We moved here in 2014. Darien's motto is nice place to live. So I hope that everybody kind of remembers that when they're making decisions on any sort of applications or how we're going to build this town and make it a place where we can actually have kids and live here safely. I'm here for Sterigenics, not here for Sterigenics, but for the issue that was raised with Sterigenics. I think you guys really need to start digging deeper into this. I live 1.2 miles away from the location, and my kid had immunodeficiency problems. When we moved here, he was finally outgrown them, and they're back. We were actually there by the plant on Saturday looking at a press conference, and I thought it'd be fun for him to kind of come see it down, because I don't think you realize how dangerous these chemicals are. Saturday, he had a horrible, horrible asthmatic attack. He hasn't had one for about 4 to 5 months. So you mentioned, Mayor, that Sterigenics does clean medical equipment. The medical equipment that they do clean are all plastics, usually for respiratory systems. So the tubes that my son uses to help his asthma are laced probably with ETO. So before you actually listen to any of their comments that they're bringing to you, you should do some research. I am in contact with Dr. Orris, who would be more than happy to educate you on what ETO does, and hydrogen peroxide is one of those chemicals that actually can sterilize rather than ETO. Independent study, I think everybody in this town, especially the kids at Mark DeLay, that we weren't notified on this. You guys say that you know, you're here for the benefit of the residents, then let us know. Let's not have what Willowbrook dictates what they're doing with Sterigenics. Why don't we make this?
Excuse me for just 1 minute.
Yeah.
Mayor Frank Trilla found out for the first time a week ago Wednesday that this report came out. He was totally blindsided by this.
In 2014, that they had a spill, so they had a leakage.
In July of this year, the EPA sent out a report about that spill. July to August.
And in July,
nobody knew any of this information. So we're all finding out at the same time, and we're doing our very best to keep people informed about it. So I'm a little bit, you know.
I understand that, but there's a lot of information that's coming out very, very fast. This year in July too, Sterigenics asked for a construction permit so they can actually put a new filter on their system. When they actually received their zoning in 1984, it was for manufacturing of air supplies. Still on Google right now, they're known as a manufacturer of supplies and not as a sterilization company. So I'm just saying, for due diligence for this committee right here, let's not just go off of what Willowbrook is saying, because obviously their town is not being run very well right now. Especially
I take offense. I really do take offense.
I'm sorry, but
that.
I take offense that my child is having asthmatic attacks since we've moved here.
I have been in communication with Mayor Trilla through this whole horrible process, and I take offense that you would say anything like that they have not done their job.
Did they inform anybody on the 2014 spill? No. They informed CDC, they informed EPA, they didn't inform any residents in Willowbrook.
Was the village of Willowbrook informed about it?
I'm pretty sure that they were.
You don't know?
Well, okay. I don't know, but then maybe we should ask. Maybe we should
ask the village of Willowbrook then.
Well, that's why I'm asking Darien to stand up and not be, let's be a nice town to live in, not a town that is surrounded by nice towns. That's what I'm asking, is that we stand up and do what's right for our residents, for us all in this room.
And that's what we do on a day-to-day basis here.
Then please, and I know my 3 minutes is up.
Yes.
But then let's have a doctor come in. Let's have independent studies come in. so that we can be assured that we can still stay here and not have, because I know how many residents are thinking of selling their houses right now.
Thank you very much for your
Thank
comments.
you.
Hello, my name's Steve Leopold. I'm a Darien resident. Live pretty close to the Sterigenics plant as well. Has me freaked out, but that's not why I'm here to talk. Before I begin, I have the City of Darien organizational chart. I'm sure you're all aware of it. It's in the budget. And up on top here, it says Citizens of Darien at the top of the chart. You guys might be a little bit elevated right now, especially for me, but the citizens are supposed to be at the top, so please listen to us tonight. I feel like I really got railroaded at the Municipal Services meeting. You know, Alderman Marquez, Showers, I don't know if you guys have kids. You probably do. You had kids. I don't know if you ever had your kid have an asthma attack where you had to rush them to the hospital. Yeah. It's the scariest thing that ever happened in my life. And you're talking about putting a trucking facility right by my house. I already have HEPA filters running day and night. And this is going to hurt my child. And I'll have to leave Darien. And this is not going to make it a nice place to live. But let me speak directly to the variance request, because last time I felt like I was railroaded when I spoke about things that actually mattered. An extra 4 feet in height will block my views of Waterfall Glen as I approach on my bicycle, because I do ride on frontage. An extra 4 feet in height will diminish my experience from within Waterfall Glen. We don't have a lot of space out here anymore to feel lost in nature, and this building extending over the horizon will ruin that feeling. An extra 4 feet in height for this building will contribute to a visual eyesore extending well beyond the immediate vicinity and municipality. An extra 4 feet in height will make a building inconsistent with the surrounding neighborhood. I know the city is very concerned about potential litigation, so I feel it's important to make sure the council is fully aware that I, as a citizen of Darien, object to the variance request before the council for those reasons stated specifically and many other general reasons. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Daniel Hebriard. I am actually a park ranger at Waterfall Glen, so I know a few things about the Forest Preserve, and I know about that one particularly. I actually worked all weekend at Waterfall Glen, I should say Sunday and Monday. I was down there in the afternoon and the early evening, so I just want to talk a little bit about Waterfall Glen and definitely how it's going to be affected. I know the current leadership is okay with this going on. I don't think that'll happen in the future with the next group of leadership. Waterfall Glen is nearly 3,000 acres, and it is considered a crown jewel. It is one of the most diverse properties in the whole state. Definitely here in the county. It holds 75% of all the flora and fauna you are going to find in the county. We do have, and I estimated it as about 1 million people go through Waterfall Glen in a typical year. I was told by a couple of people that they think that's an underestimation, that they thought about 1 million people went through on weekends. That if I include the weekdays, it'll probably be about 1.5 million, because as you all know, if you live down there, it's busy on the weekends. And people are parked up and down Northgate, and people are parked on the frontage roads and the gravel areas. People are parked down at Cass and Bluff, all down Bluff, and more to the point, they're down even Cass now. If we have a real good interest in this community, and I think you do, I think you have a pretty packed room, of doing something for the community. What I would like to see there, and I think the Forest Preserve can help facilitate this, is an REI, as a Cracker Barrel, as a Fridays. It doesn't matter. It's for the community. It would be for sales tax for Darien. It would bring in jobs. It would, I think, be a great place for these people to call their neighbor, and I think it would be busy. I was down there on Sunday, and the lots were full. People were parked on the road. Areas were hopping, and people were happy, and people were there. And then they want to get maybe a little shade. Maybe they want to get a little cooled off. There's nowhere right there to do that. That would be a great spot to have something for families, for individuals. We have biker groups that come in the mornings, 500 deep. And I'm sure they're probably hungry after they run 10 miles. I think if you look at the community needs, if you look at the community that's here, you'll find that there is a better solution.
I'm sorry, what is your name?
Daniel Hebriard.
Daniel, the Forest Preserve has known about this property for 20 years. I have not heard them once step in to say they would like to take over that property.
Well, that's not what I'm saying. I would help to facilitate, potentially. I don't speak officially for the Forest Preserve yet.
So you're a candidate for the Forest Preserve?
Correct. I'm running for Forest Preserve president.
Ah.
But I'm also a park ranger, and I've been there for 13 years, so I'm very familiar with the neighborhood. You'd see my truck going around, and I'm very familiar with the issues at Waterfall, and I care deeply about that place, and I care deeply about the people who use it and the people in the neighborhood adjoining to it. So I walk all around it, and we check our encroachments, and we have great neighbors. So with that, I would just say the last note would be, if you think about it from a point of the residents, from the point of the board, from the point of future sales
Your time is up, sir.
opportunity, I think you should look at a different alternative.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you need to move that microphone down for you?
Like that? Okay. My name is Connie Kelly. I have a question. Does the city of Darien maintain and repair Cass Avenue in that area? Is that our?
Belongs to the county.
It belongs to the county. So if there's increased wear and tear on Cass Avenue, we're at the mercy of the county to come in and do extra repair work?
Yes, I assume now that they do the same as we do, and take a look at all their roads and check them for when they're going to resurface them.
Okay, so we assume they're going to do a little bit more extra due
Well,
diligence.
they don't do it as good as we do. Let me just say that.
Okay, all right.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Richard Cush, and I'm a resident of Darien, and I've been here for 45 years, and I love this place to live. It's a beautiful place. Oh. I received a flyer a few days ago that mentions the 4 feet. And they're planning to build and have the big trucking facilities. We're not talking really small trucks. We're talking large ones right off of the Public Works facility. And I think that's a bad place to put it. The motto, as what was stated earlier, says, "Welcome to Darien. This is a nice place to live." And having this trucking company right there to eyesore that is not such a great place to live. I think it's just very dangerous to have lots of trucks like that coming in and out of the community. We have small streets, and that makes it very difficult. I think a big facility like that needs to find a bigger location, like some type of industrial park. Like there's some in Woodfield out that way, and not in a small hometown like this with lots of kids and lots of cars and traffic. It just doesn't make for good business sense and community sense. So I'm extremely opposed to this. So please don't build that trucking company right there. It's not going to help the city of Darien. And I hope you support turning this idea down. I just found out about this a few days ago, and I was very upset, and I've called for interpreters to come here tonight so I can express my voice and my feelings on this. So thank you for the opportunity for me to voice. Thank you.
Thank you. This is another candidate for office? Yes.
If I say my first name and last name, I can actually state my position.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Honorable Madam Mayor and honorable leadership here. My name is Irfan Ibrahim, and yes, I am running for Forest Preserve Commissioner for District 3, which includes Darien. I would like to start with the 4 feet height variance, and let's remember this off the bat, that Sterling Bay needs variance from people of Darien. People of Darien does not need this variance. We are allowing them to have that variance. So we cannot proceed without full information. Let's take a breather. Why are we rushing through this process? What are we trying to hide? Why are there data dumps? Why Alderman is not asking for structural and environmental study that will affect Waterfall Glen Forest Preserve and neighborhood around it? We had the gentleman whose daughter is affected by multiple lung conditions. I have talked to 3 residents 0.5 miles from that facility who's dealing with lung conditions. Let's remember there are a lot of unknowns. Let's side with the benefit of doubt. We cannot have a project rushed through without proper scrutiny. As a people of Darien and citizen of DuPage County deserve the scrutiny from the leadership. We do know that this warehouse and truck terminals will be there for next 100 years. So the question arises, does Sterling Bay want to leave the legacy of moving Mammoth Warehouse and truck terminals to City of Darien, or Sterling Bay wants to be a part of solution? I will 100% support the Waterfall Glen Commercial District because I do know at this stage that this is a private land and owner has every right to sell that land to eligible buyer. I am not opposed to that. Every single person who's sitting here understands that this is a private land. But we just don't know what the implications will be to the community. We are seeing that in Willowbrook. We are 1.5 mile radius away from the company that has been polluting carcinogens for the last 30, 40 years, and we just found out. There are a lot of unknowns. Let's remind ourselves, what are we trying to hide? Why aren't we scrutinizing the process? Again, more diesel fumes, noise pollution, environmental impact on a forest preserve, and certainly, why are we so afraid to ask current environmental impact study? 7 years ago, my son was in a crib and a diapers. Now he's in a 4th grade with a broad smile. Things have changed. Why are we not asking updated study? Responsibility falls on the Madam Mayor and a respected alderman and alderwoman that at the end of the day, what you want your legacy to be. Putting a warehouse and a truck terminals at the heart of Forest Preserve, or you decided to take steps and work with the community that aligns with the resident of Darien. Let's put a pause on this process. Let's put people's health before profits. Let's put safety before sales taxes. Thank you. My name is Irfan Ibrahim, and I am candidate of Forest Preserve Commissioner.
Good evening. My name is Ursula Tanaway, and I live not in the town of Darien, but very close in unincorporated Willowbrook. I want to thank you for signing that letter to Sterigenics. That was a great step in the right direction. I'm a biologist by training, so when I first saw this data, I said, you know, maybe there should be some extra testing, and let's see, and these numbers don't jump out as incredible. And then I saw that map by NADA that the EPA released and just about hit the floor. I haven't stopped since because the realization of the impact of what I consider an environmental disaster just hasn't left yet. So one of the reasons I'm bringing up Sterigenics in a conversation about Sterling Bay is that they currently rent warehouse space. An exemption of 4 feet for a new warehouse might not mean much today, but they also didn't think that it meant much 34 years ago when Sterigenics moved into a warehouse that was open. It's kind of a weird connection, but the choices that are made today on variances have effects down the road. I would urge you to consider what happened in Willowbrook when you decide today on what you want to happen in Darien and what you want to protect against. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rick Baum. Hi. I'm just curious, what is the basis that you approve or deny a variance request?
I don't understand.
Well, I mean, obviously, there's got to be some, you know, the ordinance is 35 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So when somebody asks for a variance, how do you make that decision?
Well, we analyze all the information that we have that's provided by Sterling Bay and from our own information, and then we make a decision as a city council. We vote.
Okay, so are there any, like, what are the stipulations? What is the criteria that you use in order to?
Well, our code, the zoning code on this property has specific requirements. I don't know if we want Dan to speak to that or Brian to speak to that.
Probably John, actually. I mean, the requirements for variance, we have in the packet. I think we did include those for all the committees, but John, it's probably, I mean, it's really a legal question. Why don't you?
We'll let our city attorney respond to that.
There's a series of criteria in the zoning ordinance that we can pull up. Give me a second. And those are criteria that guide the city council in determining whether it's reasonable or not to grant variations. It's just another term for exception or allowance. That's what the term means, and whether the proposed change will interfere with the value of neighboring property, whether strictly enforcing the code will unreasonably interfere with the value of the owner's property.
So can I just interject? A 4-foot variance might not affect the, a literal 4-foot height adjustment might not affect the value of certain properties, but the reason for potentially granting that 4-foot variance could dramatically change everything. So, you know, last week it was, or at the municipal services meeting, it was brought up that, you know, we're just here to talk about a 4-foot variance, and it's been brought up tonight, you know, the physical aesthetics of a 4-foot increase may not have much, you know, yes, there are obstructed view and physical aesthetics, but you know, at the Municipal Services Committee meeting, I asked about, you know, I asked Sterling Bay, why do you need the variance? And the only answer, the only part I could hear was about something about a roof and drain water and something like that. But I've heard also talk about automated systems. And if there's any link between automation and this 4-foot variance, I mean, I really think it's kind of sad that I even have to stand up and, I mean, this is obvious, you know, the 4-foot variance is to have a bigger operation, and that will have a dramatic impact. So yes, there will be physical aesthetic changes. On top of that, though, I mean, we all can use the commutative property. You know, if a 4-foot variance allows for more automation and heavier traffic, then that will have an impact. And I think I'm surprised that, you know, this isn't more obvious, but that's really all the point I'm trying to bring home. So thanks.
Thank you.
Quick question for Attorney Murphy. I believe there's, just to clarify for everybody, there's still 3 other items, correct, on the items with regards to the decision how or why. One of the items, if I'm not correct, is change surrounding character of the area as one of the decision things that we look at as a council.
Yes, and what the commission.
Correct. So there's a few more items on there. If you, something that's trying to clarify it, I believe there's 2 more items that, or 2 more items on there.
I'm looking at a total of 5.
Okay, yeah, can you just tell that for everybody
Sure.
so everyone's very clear.
Let me just quickly paraphrase them. And these are not must meet. These are what the council, these are factors the council has to balance. Whether the purpose is not based primarily on a desire to increase financial gain, whether the general character of the property will be adversely altered, whether the overall value of the property, meaning the property in question, will be improved and there will not be any potential adverse effects on neighboring properties, whether the proposed variation will impair an adequate supply of light and air in adjacent property, substantially increase congestion in the public streets, increase the danger of fire, or endanger public safety, and whether it will alter the essential character of the neighborhood. So those are the criteria that the commission looked at, the committee looks at, and that you'll make a final decision on.
Thank you. That's all this is
Okay.
asking. Thanks.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Scott Hendrickson. I also live in an unincorporated Hinsdale. Just going over those points that the attorney mentioned, the general character of the property be adversely altered. potentially adverse effects on neighboring properties, substantially increase congestion or endanger the public safety, and adversely alter the essential character. You cannot tell me that tens of thousands of trucks will not alter the general character of the property, cause adverse effects to neighboring properties. I'll give you some in a minute here. Substantially increase congestion on the public streets. Tens of thousands of trucks will absolutely do that. Endanger the public safety. I'll speak to that in a minute. And adversely alter the essential character of the neighborhood. It's going to do that as well. Let me go through those points. Number one, tens of thousands of trucks is going to create a safety issue. I live 3 blocks from that facility. Okay, I drive down that frontage road to and from. I shop at Home Depot in Darien. I worked at Home Depot in Darien. Okay, I go that way quite a bit. On Saturday mornings, actually not just Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings, there are hundreds of bikers, okay, going up and down the frontage road, Cass, going all around. I see them all the time. These are people who are going to be adversely affected by tens of thousands of trucks. There will be accidents. I drive down 91st Street. There's a little walkway across from one part of Waterfall Glen to the next. Tens of thousands of trucks. They're not going to keep them on Cass, and you're not going to keep, you're not going to keep them on the exit there. They're going to come up 83, cut over, come up Clarendon Hills Road. They're going to cut over 91st, and so forth. They're going to come through Lorraine. They're going to come down 87th. They're going to get lost. They're going to back up. The possibility of that 91st, you see people having to stop quickly all the time for people who are biking, walking, etc. That neighborhood also is home to a large number of families. Okay? I raised my children there. I've got a senior at Hinsdale South. I've got a sophomore at University of Illinois. When they were little, we're pushing them in strollers. When they got bigger, they're running, they're biking, etc. Okay? There are literally hundreds at night, young families with their kids in strollers, older people walking around hand in hand, walking their dogs. It's a nice place. Okay? People stop and say hi. Okay? You don't want to be endangered by tens of thousands of trucks coming through, okay? This is going to cause safety problems. This is going to cause, someone's going to get hurt. You mentioned, and I'll close with this, you mentioned about the roads, okay? The county takes care of those roads. There have been potholes on that road for years that don't get fixed. Tens of thousands of trucks are going to create more potholes. You're not going to pay for them. It's going to ruin my car.
Thank you.
John Norbert of Darien, and by the way, I want to make sure that all the policemen know I love and appreciate them. On stereogenics, why can't they shut down, if there's evidence that there's a significant problem, why can't they shut it down and do the testing another way? When we built the atomic bomb, we didn't test it in the middle of an urban area. We had controlled testing. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Hi. Ooh. Hi, Lauren Caseberg of Darien. I have a couple quick things. So one on the stereogenics issue, I attended the forum, and one of the things that really stood out to me was that the man who was there from, ATSDR, the CDC, and Dr. Orris specifically said to everyone in attendance, make sure you tell your doctors, tell your pediatricians that you've had this exposure, because it can impact analyses of if there's medical issues or whatnot. And so for me as a Darien resident, I do think that it's something that should be shared with Darien residents. And, I'm going to tell my pediatrician, I don't want to only be lucky that I attended that forum to know that. So I do think that's a responsibility of the council to sort of take that next step and figure out what do we owe to the citizens. And then I have a question about the Sterling Bay facility. So my understanding is Sterling Bay is a development company. So I assume they're going to be, maybe this is a question for Dan, renting that space out to a company. Do we know who will actually occupy the space? And
no, it's a spec building.
So if we don't know, how do we know the actual impacts.
There's certain uses, once, if it does get built.
Dan, can you speak into the microphone,
Sorry.
please?
If the study is approved and built, there's a certain amount of uses that the warehouse has the ability under that zoning to include. I don't have them in front of me, but there's certain things that can go in there. Under the business license, they would also have to disclose what they're doing. So there is some checks and balances.
It just seems to me, as the other gentleman said, it sounds like it's 4 feet, but clearly 4 feet completely changes the character of what that building is and allows for different types of business, like these blind distribution centers. And so it just, if you're going to rely on studies that have been done on traffic and environmental impacts, to me, a key thing is like what's going to be stored there? What type of trucks are, so those questions are things that are in my mind. So thank you for answering that for me.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dr. Bassam Osman. I am a neurologist and I am very much worried about these carcinogenic issues, and I am going to look more into it and hopefully send you some information I can hopefully obtain. And I am the chairman of Horizon Academy, which has a permit to build a private school on Frontage Road about a few hundred feet east to the proposed trucking facility.
I know, I saw him before.
And I think this trucking facility would adversely affect the school. There would be, parents driving their kids to the school, and the presence of trucks that would probably come also through Frontage Road to to Clarendon Hills and Road and so on, and will affect the school. So it will have an adverse effect on the school. And I don't understand why the Forest Preserve is not interested in this, because my 10-acre property, the Forest Preserve tried several times sending letters, making offers to that property, which is just a few hundred feet, and it's the same size, 10 acres. And I don't understand why they aren't interested in this property. So I think I'm going to bring it to their attention if this doesn't go through. But I want to let you know that this is really would adversely affect not just one resident, but a whole number of parents and school children. Thank you.
Yeah, I suspect. I suspect that the Forest Preserve has not come forward to buy the property is because the price tag is too high and they can't afford it. I think that's the real reason for that.
Good evening. My name is Janice Fisher, and thank you for
you have a very soft voice. Make sure you speak into the microphone.
My name is Janice Fisher. Can you hear me better? Okay. Talk louder. All right. Here goes. My name is Janice Fisher. I urge you to vote no to the height variance requested by Sterling Bay because the extra 4 feet in height for this proposed warehouse will limit our view of Waterfall Glen and will change the experience of the natural landscape. In other words, it will adversely alter the essential character of that neighborhood. We are counting on you, the City Council, to say no to this variance for other reasons as well. Reasons that you must take into account since they are directly correlated to and will be the result of the requested 4-foot increase in height of this building. In a recent article in The Doings, Mayor Weaver pointed out that this warehouse will most likely be a fulfillment center. Fulfillment centers often operate 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. If you approve this variance tonight, then you must also limit the proposed warehouse's hours of operation, like you did Steak and Shake on 75th Street. If you are not prepared to do that, then you must vote no to the variance, since the round-the-clock hours of operations would increase the amount of light and noise to the adjacent property, Waterfall Glen, which would hurt the inhabitants of the forest and adversely affect the essential character of Waterfall Glen. If it's not going to be a fulfillment center, then you must question the feasibility of Sterling Bay's traffic study. If only 57 trucks use 31 docks in an 8-hour day, then each truck will utilize each dock for 4 3/4 hours. That does not make good business sense to me, especially since the 4-foot height variance is needed to accommodate automated stacking technology, which improves warehouse efficiency and throughput. On the other hand, if this warehouse is going to be a fulfillment center, then you must request a new traffic study, since the one presented does not account for 24-hour-a-day operations. If the proposed warehouse operates 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, like many fulfillment centers do, then the proposed warehouse has the potential to bring over 300 trucks per day into our community. That's well over 100,000 trucks per year. The particulate matter or soot.
Ms. Fisher, your time is up.
I relinquish my 3 minutes to my wife. I relinquish my 3 minutes of speak to my wife.
Ms. Fisher, would you step away to allow someone else to speak? Would anyone else like to speak to the council?
Want to get their 3 minutes sorted? Stand up.
I left off here the particulate.
Why can't he talk?
Please behave yourself back there, please. It's inappropriate to make those types of comments. Just now, you just said something to the representative from Sterling Bay. No, you said it to him. Go ahead.
My name is Kim Savage. I'm a resident of Darien. And the particulate matter or soot, which is a known carcinogen, and the noise pollution from that many trucks would endanger the health, safety, and well-being of the people in surrounding communities and the inhabitants of Waterfall Glen, as well as cause traffic congestion and road deterioration. In light of what just happened in Willowbrook, you cannot risk an error this grave without having all the facts. As elected officials, we are counting on you to represent us and to make the right decision on our behalf, and that decision is to vote no on the variance. I also have one more question. Who is responsible for maintaining the frontage road? We know Cass Avenue is a county road.
The state owns the frontage roads.
The state owns
part of it's ours.
We have a separate agreement.
Right in front of that property?
On that particular area of frontage, the city has an agreement years ago, I don't know, 25 probably years ago, Dan, that we've assumed maintenance of that.
There's several
roadway.
parts, yeah. City of Darien, Illinois Department of Transportation, and Downers Grove Township.
Okay.
Just like Cass.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Oh dear, do I let this guy to speak again?
No.
I'm sorry, Mr. Norbert. Yeah, I need to let the other individuals that want to speak to us. Thank you.
Mayor, if I might, I mean, to help the speakers in their time allotment, as we get to 2.5 minutes, maybe I'll just raise my hand.
Okay.
And they'll know they have a 30-second.
Hello, I'm James. I live about, maybe a half mile from the proposed site. I think I'm just a little, I guess I'm just slightly sensitive about the issue right now because I'm just worried about, as the previous speaker just said, the particulates, carcinogens. My mother just passed away of cancer recently. I just moved into the area. It's closer to where the proposed warehouse is. About 3 years ago, I have a a young son. I'm just struggling with the impact it will have, and if the city council has a way to make this, to not grant the variance and, perhaps change some minds, particularly hopefully the owner's mind, to make this process a bit more difficult for the warehouse to be built. Obviously, I agree completely with many of the other issues that have been brought up, congestion, whatnot, all those other things. And the biggest thing is just, for me, since I live very close, is just health. And, I love Darien. My grandparents have been here, moved here. I have many happy memories here. And my son just started going to Concord. And, we love it. So that's my concern. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Paula Walrick. I live in Darien, not too far from Cass Avenue in the frontage road. I've been to more than one meeting here and listened to residents 100% stand here and voice objection to the construction of this warehouse. And yet, I don't see an equivalent response from you that you're listening to us. Why do we persist upon considering this variance when you haven't got one single resident agreeing that you should do it? I'm amazed that you persist in considering this proposal.
Paula, you're Paula, right?
Yes.
Hi, Paula. You're probably surprised because the city of Darien is very transparent in everything they do. We have not put anything behind closed doors on this issue. You've been to other meetings because that's how we do business. We make sure we get the word out on projects, and we alert the residents so they know and hear everything about issues before we sit here, and we are listening to you, and before we vote. So I take great exception to individuals, and I've had to listen to personal insults through this whole process. I take great exception to the fact that everyone thinks we're doing something behind closed doors.
I didn't say you were doing anything behind closed doors. I said you're not listening to us.
You can see we're listening. We've had numerous meetings to listen to you.
Madam Mayor, may I? Paula, when we first did the workshop, I think you were in the room. If anybody's counting the cards right now, I'm the swing vote right now, and I'm listening to everything that's going on, and I don't have a decision, yes or no, until every single one of these people talk and I get their answer. So, madam, I am listening.
Knock wood.
Thank you.
Paula, though, I want to add.
Paula,
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
our city attorney could much more eloquently describe this, but these issues become before the council. They have a responsibility to follow our ordinances, our review process. If the city council were to vary for that and not even entertain this, that would be a lot of trouble for the city, for the process. And once you start doing that, you're not really allowing the rights of a property owner to go through this process. So I think the city council, and I've been to numerous meetings, they're doing exactly what they should be doing. They're letting this go through a process prior to taking a vote to approve or not approve something. If they were to just cut this short at any point, guarantee you we'd have a warehouse built because some judge would order it. There's a due process that everybody's following, and I don't know how you've concluded that nobody's listening. But I think this whole process has been about listening. So,
No, I don't think that nobody's listening. What I'm worried about is the fact that I come to these meetings week after month, and we're still talking about the same question.
That's the due process.
So what we
That's
need
the
to
due
do is
process
say no.
Well, wait, but that's not the responsibility that the elected officials have to simply say that. They have a process that they're following, and it's a due process whether you own the property or Sterling or whoever owns the property. And if you vary from their due process rights, that's what gets municipalities in trouble. All you got to do is Google municipalities that don't follow due process, and you'll see many court orders that would shove things down municipalities' throats just for the very thing you're asking to do, not take time to go through these meetings and hearings. So this is, believe me, this is the proper way to do this, is to allow the elected officials to hear this and go through this process and make an informed decision. And really, that's what's happening here, and that's why it's to the point, that's why I went to a public hearing, that's why I went to the committee, and that's why it is here tonight. Frankly, just as Alderman Joe Kenny said, this is part of the process and listening and making sure there is due process, so, you know, whatever the vote is, that we followed that. But that's really why it's still here today.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Bonnie Baum, and I'm here to read something that was prepared by a gentleman by the name of Patrick Donahue from the Department of Financial and Professional Regulation. He's a licensed professional engineer. I don't think I'll be able to finish this in 3 minutes, so there's a number of people here that said they would come up and continue to read this. This is concerned, dear
Well, you know what? The council has a copy of that letter. I asked the council, I asked the city administrator to give everyone in the council a copy of Mr. Donahue's letter.
Okay.
His license is photographed in that bottom.
So we have the information. You don't have to read the letter to us.
Okay. I'm a resident for over 30 years. I'm 0.9 miles away from this site. Myself and my family have allergies. We're very aware of the air. We're very aware of the noise. 365 days of the year, I open my window at night, and that's right behind my head. When there's somebody burning leaves, I smell it, and anything that comes from a wind from the north is in my environment. I'm asking you please to consider my feelings, all of my neighbors in Timberlake, all of my friends that live in Darien and that pay taxes. I'm asking you to please reconsider, if you haven't already, to vote no. Please.
Thank you.
I'm Edward Mack, and I live in Darien. I've lived in Darien for 28 years. Hi, Paula. I'm going to contradict Paula because I'm actually going to speak in favor of granting the variance. I know that's going to be very unpopular with the group that is here, because it's very easy to get people to come out to be against something. But let's talk about reasons to do this. One is, commerce is the lifeblood of America, right? We can't live in the nice houses and have the nice things without commerce providing them. This is an element of commerce. And frankly, I think it's important that maybe we take on a little bit of the burden to say, if we want the nice things, we can't be not in my backyard and say, well, let the people in Willowbrook or let the people in Bolingbrook or let the people in Joliet bear all the burden of the factories and the trucks and everything else. You're asking for a variance of 4 feet. Okay, grant the variance of 4 feet. How is that really going to degrade what we have in our community right now, which is an interstate highway, one of the busiest interstate highways in the nation, going through our neighborhood with how many tens of thousands of cars and trucks and motorcycles and everything else making noise and particulate and fumes, and we all seem to be fine. So yes, we're going to add a few more. A few? Yeah, a few more. How many tens of thousands do you think go by every day, Paula?
Pulling into our town?
pulling into a frontage road on our town.
Please, no
But
comments.
The point being is, let's let commerce go forward. But let's also use your authority, your power, to regulate the way in which this commerce occurs so that it has the least impact on the community. I see a lot of signs that say truck route. Well, you can designate some streets a truck route and some streets are not a truck route, with fines to be levied if the trucks are going down 91st Street or 87th Street on the way to the facility. You can do all kinds of things to make sure that the only ingress and egress to this is off of I-55 to Cass Avenue to the frontage road. You can make necessary improvements to make this happen. We shouldn't let fear run our lives. It's very easy to imagine all the terrible things that can happen, but in fact, they rarely do. We let our imaginations run wild, and then after the fact we say, oh wow, it wasn't so bad after all. I think we can live with a truck facility. I believe there was a truck facility there at some point, certainly nothing of the magnitude that's being proposed now, but it was an old truck terminal.
It's always been, yeah.
Sorry. So anyway, I'm for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can you clarify that it was a repair facility, it didn't have the same use, the former facility that was there, correct?
Oh, no, there was even before that one, there was a trucking facility there that parked trucks there on a routine basis.
There was more storage.
Yeah.
It was storage, yeah.
Yeah.
Different, yeah.
Yeah.
My name is Mary Ellen Burke. I've lived in Darien 26 years. I live right down from Mark DeLay, right by the Woodlands. If it's bothering Mark DeLay, it'll be in your airspace too from Strigenics. What bothers me is if we're going to let our imagination run wild, let's go for Love's Canal, New York. Let's go for tainted water in Crestwood, where the officials didn't tell the residents what was going on. Let's go for Lockformer. That was not an imagination. That happened. That's still federal land not being able to be built on. Children died from brain cancers there. There were kids on 70th Street with brain tumors. Hofstedt family had a daughter with lymphoma. My entire neighborhood, I can name about 15 to 20 people with cancers, including my husband, Tom Burke, who I saw through hospice. We moved here in 1993. Put 3 boys through Mark DeLay, Eisenhower, great schools, Hinsdale South. Tom came down with cancer. We checked for radon, not it. Don't know how, don't know why. Urostomy, cancer of the bladder. Urostomy, radiation, chemo brain. We went through everything with him. Laid in bed 13 days, died in hospice, January 26, 2011. I had a major house fire in 5 years ago. I didn't hear from one person from the city of Darien, not one. I don't know how many fires you have every night. I don't know how many people get displaced, but not one person contacted me or my son, not one. Finally, I reached out to Brian Vanna, who ironically had a fire himself since then. Point being that everybody says they're here for everybody, but are you really? We're going to be there when it's time to vote. Yeah. We're going to be there to pay our taxes in full, and we're going to be there to remember who the naysayers were and who the positive people were. See?
Good evening. My name is Steve DeLurgio. I've spoken to you folks before, and I know we all have good intentions. I wanted to contradict a couple of things that have been said so far. My greatest concern about this is traffic count. We've done analysis, you've done analysis at 297 vehicles. What's going to happen when it goes to 600 or 1,200? Do we know Sterling Bay may share that information with you. A standard process in this type of decision-making would be to do what's called sensitivity analysis. What happens if we're wrong? What if happens if it's 600? These systems are not linear, they're dynamic. So what happens is we're near capacity, or maybe we're only at 50% capacity. It might take only 30 trucks for us to get to capacity at that location. So what happens at 600? What happens at 1200? What happens with a 24-hour operation? Warehouses are not homogeneous. They're heterogeneous. How do we use that warehouse? Do we know how it's going to be used? Is it going to, it is a fulfillment center? Is it going to be a high volume fulfillment center with 500,000 vehicles going in there? All right, the statistics are there to justify these things. Sterling Bay is obligated to share that kind of information. Do we know who's going to be in there? Apparently we don't. Are these good, well-intended people? Yes. Are they honorable people? Yes. But we are often disappointed in the results that come about. So there is a huge difference, a tremendous difference. You need more information. You should table it at a minimum. I think we need a better use for that property. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, or evening. I just have two questions. Did the traffic study include the possibility of automated trucks, driverless trucks? Yes or no?
Couldn't answer that question.
So you don't know?
The traffic study is based on certain traffic patterns and traffic. If it was based on, you're saying no drivers is what you're saying?
A trend in the trucking industry is automated driverless trucks.
Ask Chloa, who's here this evening.
Did it?
We use historical results, not
so no.
hypothetical.
No, right?
Yeah.
Okay. My other question is, was there any research done in terms of potential drones at the site, fulfillment drones?
That would fall under the use.
Would that be a permitted use under our code?
We'd have to double check on that. I mean, we haven't had that question posed to us before.
Yeah,
when you say a drone, what do you mean a drone? For watching?
Well, another major trend in the fulfillment industry is the use of drones. Amazon just...
For delivering purposes.
Exactly. Amazon just patented a huge warehouse in the sky, and no sooner than July 24th of this year.
And while it's been patented, I'm not sure what the United States laws are or what the federal regulations are on those.
So but for our purposes, did it?
Couldn't tell you that, no.
So we don't know?
Correct.
Maybe we should look into that. Thank you.
I'm Todd Holtmark, Pine Parkway, 7815 Pine Parkway. The gentleman who was for this pointed out that we have the traffic going by on I-55 all the time, and it's not a big deal. But when they're going by at 60 miles an hour, or it's a traffic jam and they're going by slow. But when they're going to get off there, they're going to throw on the Jake brakes, and you're just going to hear a loud and if you are getting more trucks getting off at this exit all the time, you're going to hear that all the time. And you could put out the sign, no Jake brakes, but I think you'll hear it.
Thank you. Okay, then I think we'll close off. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council, members of the board. On behalf of, my name is Brian Liston. On behalf of Sterling Bay, I want to thank you for your professionalism and the due process that you provided us. We want to be good neighbors. That's what we want. We want to be a good neighbor.
No comments, please. Let's be civil about this.
And as council presented, that if it's litigated, it will be at a de novo basis. And there is a patent and toting building less than 6 blocks away that has a 40-foot clear and was unanimously approved. Again, I want to thank Darien for the due process and the professionalism they've provided Sterling Bay throughout this entire process. Mayor, you should be very proud, and thank you, and we want to be a good neighbor to Darien. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was 6-0. I wasn't here for that vote.
Okay.
June 20th last year.
Someone that wants to speak to us.
Jerry Kirschbaum, Darien. It doesn't matter if there was a building approved.
Could you speak closer to the microphone? Thank you.
It doesn't matter if there was a building approved X number of feet away. You don't have to approve this building. It's clearly a case of business versus the environment here, and I just think Waterfall Glen is such a huge thing for the environment that it should trump any business purpose that isn't really known and been evaluated thoroughly. I don't know if it would take an environmental impact study. The environmental impact study is from 2011. It's 7 years old. I don't know how much something like that cost. I heard about some other kind of study just a little while ago mentioned, and I've never heard of that kind of study before, but it sounded like something that should be looked into. I don't know what position, what other businesses in the, as I understand it, 5 years that this property has been on the market either for sale or for a tenant, what other businesses have been considered? Is there no other interest in this property? Is there no other way to deal with some of the eyesore aspects of this? I'm not an expert on municipal condemnation law or anything. I don't know if some sort of eminent domain can't be exercised to eradicate eyesore aspects of the property as it exists now.
I will let the attorney address it, but I know that the eminent domain laws have changed dramatically and don't give us a lot of latitude to do something like that. But I'd like the city attorney to talk about that issue, and also have Dan mention what has been proposed on that property, the history of that property.
Let's make sure everybody understands the word condemnation. It's used in two senses here in local government. One sense we're not talking about when we speak condemnation. That's a dilapidated building that we go into court and get an order to have the thing demolished. Condemnation here is the exercise of eminent domain. The city council, as a government, has the authority to acquire property provided two things occur. One, there has to be a public purpose. And two, we have to be prepared to pay for it. That's what eminent domain means, to exercise the government's power to buy property for a public purpose. I think that's what you're alluding to, sir.
Well, there's an eyesore on that property. I've gone over there, and it's that big cement structure. I don't know who owns that.
Well, that's why I wanted Dan Gumbeck to talk about the history of the property.
And John, if you're done, there's a building there. There's currently a building in place there, and here, for those folks that have not seen it, obviously, yes, it's a building that's aged. Is the building in violation? No,
Are you
it's not
talking
in
about
violation.
the building that's labeled a public works facility?
No, that's
No.
west of this property.
That's west.
I understand that.
But
I don't see the building you're referring to. Could you
There's a building currently in place there. Is that what you're referring to? I guess the question is,
No,
what is the dilapidated property that you're looking at?
Are you talking the salt shed?
Yeah, maybe it's the salt
That's-
shed.
that's Public
Is
Works.
that Public Works?
It's ours.
That's really an eyesore.
That's why it's hard to put anything next to it.
Okay, so our building's an eyesore.
No, sir, sir, just remember, it's not an eyesore in January. It's a valuable resource.
It stores all that salt that keeps your streets nice.
What about the other aspect of my question? What about the, has there been any other offers in the last
That's why I
5
wanted
years?
Dan to mention to you our history on this.
Matter of fact, through the representative of Great Dane, They have been always forthcoming to let us know, hey, these people might be interested in this property. Are you willing to entertain it? There has been phone calls where truck brokers, what's been there in the past, in other words, where they drop off a trailer, 24-hour operation, they drop off a trailer, they turn around, leave it for 3 days, come back, pick it up, and it was basically a transfer site. That is no longer allowed on that site. The Great Dane also understands that, and they wouldn't even provide us with those types of leads, if you want to say. There's been thought processes on a sportsplex center. The sportsplex center has recently been entertained through the city council. There was, again, there was a lot of tax moving parts to that, I'll refer to it, whether it was school districts, city council, the city itself, and other ventures potentially. The Forest Preserve, we've had conversations with the Forest Preserve. The Forest Preserve has not put any interest in buying it, sharing a responsibility, whatever that means, whether it was, there's been talk of like a bicycle center, for example, a restaurant in there. No one has come forth. We have tried putting things out there. People have mentioned Cracker Barrel, or a McDonald's. I mean, that itself creates a lot of traffic in itself. So there's also been a warehouse, office condo warehouse, prior to the Forest Preserve buying the property next door, which is now basically wetlands. So there's been a lot of opportunities, if you want to say, but none of those opportunities have become fruition.
And how long has that process been going on?
Probably 10 years, easily 10 years, since the trucking place has moved out.
All right, well, I would just conclude by saying that you don't have to grant this variance. You're within your rights as far as the criterion that council laid out to deny this variance. And it would seem to me, you don't know what's coming up down the road. That's true. If something worse could come along that you couldn't stop. But you can stop this. They can build a smaller factory. It doesn't have to be.
Time. 30 seconds.
When they have 30.
Yeah.
Anyway, Waterfall Glen's a gem, and I got to come down on the side of that. I like business myself, but I got to come down on the side of Waterfall Glen.
Thank you. Alderman McIver?
Yeah, could I ask for clarification on something?
Yes.
The gentleman from Sterling Bay, what was your name again, sir?
Brian Liston.
Brian Liston. Okay, so Mr. Liston mentioned specifically Panettone. I think that, am I pronouncing that right?
Correct.
On Lamont Road at 40 feet. Was that a variance?
No.
Okay, just want to clarify that with you, sir.
I think his point was that it's allowed. That was allowed for a
Because it was zoned that way.
Yeah. Warehouse, yes. Did anyone else want to address the council? All right, then let's move on to old business, and there being no old business, I'll move right to the consent agenda. We have items A through I on the consent agenda this evening, and I'm going to read all of these items since we have a viewing audience on television who may not know what's on the agenda. Item A is a motion to grant a waiver of a raffle license for the Nick Cott Charity for TBI. The next item is a motion to grant a waiver of a raffle license bond for the Cancer Smashers. Are they going to come to, were they going to come tonight?
No, but, no, they weren't planning on coming.
Item C is a motion granting a waiver of the $50 a day fee for the Class J temporary liquor license for Our Lady of Peace School. The next item is a motion to approve an ordinance authorizing the disposal of surplus property, city property, which includes bicycles, chairs, tables, etc. The next item is a motion to authorize the expenditure of budgeted funds up to $10,000 to enter into an agreement with IO Solutions to conduct testing to establish an eligibility list from which to hire police officers to fill anticipated openings. The next item is a motion to authorize the expenditure of budgeted funds from line item 01-40-4325, which is for consulting professional services for the one-year law enforcement policy manual update in an amount not to exceed an amount of $7,994. The next item is a motion to approve a resolution accepting the public water main improvements for Panettone Warehouse, which is located at 7879 Lamont Road. The next item is a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the mayor to award a contract extension to Homer Tree Care in an amount not to exceed $155,515 for the city's 2018-19 tree trimming and removal program. And the last item is a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the mayor to accept the unit price proposal from Ramiro Guzman Landscaping for the purchase and installation of our 50/50 Parkway Tree Program and the Parkway Tree Replacement Program in an amount not to exceed $35,755. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Alderman MacIver, seconded by Alderman Shower. No discussion. The roll, please.
MacIver. Aye. Shower.
Aye.
Vaughn.
Aye.
Marquez.
Aye.
Belzak.
Aye.
Clistic.
Aye.
Kenny.
Aye.
7 ayes.
All the items have been approved. Let's move to new business. New business A, consider...
Had a different title. It was up, but they did.
This is the motion now, not the
Yes.
one on my sheet here?
Correct.
Okay. Item A, under new business, is a consideration of a motion to approve an ordinance approving a variation from the Darien zoning ordinance and granting site plan approval for 1035 South Frontage Road, which is the Sterling Bay property. Do I have a motion to approve? Alderman Belzak, seconded by Alderman Shower. Discussion.
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank the audience for their comments. I'd like to say that how many people, just show of hands, have ever been to a city council here before for a meeting? Okay? There's a good amount of time that the group of us sitting in here are looking out in the audience and there's nobody here. Okay? I got into the city council because I was constantly coming. Even when there was nothing going on, I came. Okay? And I got an education of the process. And I encourage you all, not so much to watch it on Channel 6 at lunchtime, or to come down here, see what's going on. Because if you did come down here on a regular basis and watch what's going on, we may not all agree on things, we may not all see eye to eye on things, but one thing I can tell you about every single person that's on this side of the aisle here tonight, we all love Darien. We all put our heart and soul into it. I'm at City Hall every day grabbing my mail in case some elderly person who doesn't have email wants to write a letter. And there's not been a day in the last 5.5 years where I've not gone to City Hall to get mail out of that box. I take my vote here tonight seriously. And some of the people that were snapping and yelling, you got to be careful. You got to take care of the waitress who's serving you. Is what I'm saying here. Okay. Sterling Bay, I would have liked to have seen you guys get up here and talk as much about your project and how great it is going to be for the community. You said you're going to do it, you want to be good neighbors, but then you threw it back on our face about the 6-0 vote. And I got to tell you, I wasn't one bit happy that was how you spent your time sitting up here. Okay, I really do. I would have loved to hear more of your 3 minutes about how to sell it. But don't worry about that now. It's over. I'm done. Thank you.
Did you want to come in?
What's the 6-0 vote?
He asked about the Panettone. He was only here for about 30 seconds up here about Panettone and kind of threw it in our face that thing was passing and we're sitting back here. I didn't like the way it was done. I'll be honest with you. Okay.
Do you want to go up to the microphone?
Point of order. Is public comment closed? Point of order.
There's many points of fact that we could have gotten into about various discussion that we've already been asked. First of all, Mr. Gombach and Mr. Manning at the city have done an excellent job with us over the course of the last really 9 months. And they have asked tirelessly for reports, studies, brokerage surveys, supply and demand studies, financial analyses, highest and best use What can we do to help the municipal services? What can we do to repave the frontage road? What can we do to plant more trees next to the forest preserve, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We would be here until after midnight talking about all those things, and I think they've been recorded and put into your packets, and there's been discussed, it's been dialogued, it's been workshopped. We're very excited about the project, as my colleague said. We want to make the $25 million investment. We think it's appropriate, and we're excited about it, and we're excited to be in Darien.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
While I appreciate the comments that people made tonight, and I really do, and we do listen. We listened last week, and we listened again tonight. I think what was really unfortunate about this process is literature went out, Facebook postings went out that really misrepresented this project. I didn't mind last week when people went to the microphone. In fact, I told the mayor I thought the people who spoke last week spoke very eloquently. They held to their 3 minutes. They made excellent presentations. What I don't appreciate is when I have a resident call me and say, I'm going to have 4,000 semis go down my street, or I heard this is going to cause cancer in the children in the schools. Those kind of things mislead and scare people. Sterigenics is a whole nother issue, and as I sat there last week listening to the Sterigenics presentation, I thought there are going to be people that are going to come to City Council next week and they're going to say, this would be our Sterigenics. Well, that's not the case. I just didn't appreciate the misinformation. Those of you who have heartfelt concerns, I appreciate that. But you also have to understand, and I said this last week, we make our decisions based on the data we have. I've read through this material probably 8 or 9 times. I went out and walked the path this weekend. I went down 91st Street. I went down Lorraine. I went down Fern. I went down South Frontage. I went up North Frontage. I stood on the property and looked at the forest preserves from that area there. I live a half a mile from this project, and I really wanted to make sure that when I voted tonight, I voted for what I thought was appropriate. A lot of people in this room are going to be very unhappy with my vote tonight. And you know what? I accept that. My son looked at me yesterday, my 42-year-old, and said, why don't you just vote no, Dad, and then everybody will like you? And I said, if I vote no, I'm voting against my principles, and my principles are important to me. And if I get people who are upset with me because I voted a yes for something that I believe in, that I think is good for Darien, that will fill a need in that area, then I'm sorry that you feel that way. I have to act on my principles. You're not going to find 7 people sitting around a table who care as much about this city as we do. Some woman says, we'll go vote. Fine, go vote. If you want to vote against me, for 22 years I've been on this council and I've worked my tail end off for the residents of my ward, that's fine. But I'm making my decision based on the data that I've read, what I've accumulated, what I've learned, and what I've listened to from people like you. I don't respect the misinformation that was spread on this project. I appreciate the good information. As I asked Sterling Bay last week, and if you were here, I asked him, can you do anything else, you're dreamers, can you build anything else on that property that would appeal to us, because this is our community? And they said no. Well, hell no. And I said that, and I asked that question. If you were here, you heard that. So I preface my vote with what I just said, and I hope you understand that anybody on this council, whether they vote yes or no, is voting from the heart what they feel is right.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you, Alderman Marquez. Alderman Guyver?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to address a couple points just from my perspective, because I think it's fair to the developer who wants to invest in our city, and our staff that spent many months obviously working with this developer, as they have with other developers in the past. But a couple things. So I'm not against business. I'm not against commerce. And as a point of clarification, I think this is a vote on the variance and the site plan. Site plan. So it's not just the variance, it's also the site plan. So I kind of looked at kind of the data, and to the gentleman's point about supporting this, we do have this in our backyard. If you go to 7879 Lamont Road, there's a 185,000 square foot warehouse that's sitting there that is currently 62% vacant.
16,000 square feet are up for rent.
Right. 62. Thanks, Joe.
Got it.
But I've got it. So it's 62% vacant, and that is Class A space because they have that 32-foot clearance. Could I finish? Okay. So they have the height that Sterling Bay is asking for, and yet it is 62% vacant. But when we looked at that particular development, which obviously that's in my ward and in my backyard, and residents were impacted by that because they live next door to it, there were some things that were looked at from a site development perspective. And it's kind of interesting. So that's 185,000 square feet, and this is 153,000 square feet. So quick math, about 18% smaller, yet the Panettone's got 12 docks expandable to 22 docks at a bigger space, and this one's already going in for 31 truck docks, if I read the material correctly. And all of the docks with respect to the way the site is positioned, on Lamont Road is the docks are in the rear of the building, where here they're actually forward-facing to the frontage. And I'm sure, I don't know, were there noise studies? I can't remember on that one. Dan, were there noise studies conducted about the noise of those trucks coming in and out facing the.
Though there was not a separate decibel study for trucks sitting there.
Yeah, and I mean, there was, and back when Panettone was coming in, there was an urgency. I remember we tried to speed up the process so they can get into construction. So we kind of rushed through that development, and it's vacant, but yet it must be a pretty good property because it sold like 8 days ago for $19.5 million. So obviously it's a rich market, and I'm not against it, but there's, I think, issues I have with the actual site development and also with respect to the variance in terms of height. So it's not just about the height, from my personal, the way I'm looking at the
I'm sorry,
development.
Alderman McIver, you said we rushed the Panettone development. I'm not sure what that.
If I remember correctly, Dan, and sketchy, but I remember there was a reason that we wanted to. I don't know if it was their asphalt. There was a reason that they kind of rushed to get certain approvals, get things on the city council agenda toward the end in terms of construction. If I remember that, and maybe I don't remember that correctly, but again, we didn't. It was kind of, we didn't take our time to really look at things like the sound of having 31 truck bays facing toward the residents of Darien on the south side.
With all due respect, I have to debate that a little bit because I know we talked to the residents over there from the Woodmere subdivision, and we specifically made them put up a fence, a barrier fence that had a sound design wall study regardless if there was going to be any additional noise. Plus, there was another 150-foot buffer.
But that was Panettone.
Correct.
Okay,
yes,
so
yes.
we're kind of like, I think we're crossing a little bit. We're crossing wires. The sound study I'm talking about is for Sterling Bay.
Correct, and there was no residential impact in that, from what we saw and from what the reports that were based on.
So
as far
again,
as the noise.
it's for me from where I'm sitting as someone representing the constituents, my constituents. It's not just the variance; it's also the way the site plan is presented, kind of the high density of the truck docks and so forth, and comparing it to what we already have, that's 62% vacant in Darien. Thank you. Oh, the gentleman.
Yes.
Asked.
I just want to clarify. My name is Jeff Fisher, and I have been with Sterling.
Why don't you come up to the mic, then everybody can hear you at home.
So the Panettone building, the tenant that was originally in the building is called Pestview. That's the company. They approached Panettone in the process, and they are a low-impact truck user on a much larger building. The tenant had the right to buy the building, as you made note of within the last week, because they're expanding in the building. They have a small square footage in the entire building up for lease from they own the entire building. So you had a tenant that grew in your community, that's a low impact user that is trying to sublease a small portion that they're planning on using for expansion opportunity to stay in your community versus leaving a vacant building in your community. So from a business perspective, what a great program from Pestview. What a great idea. So it could be, and again, we don't know the tenant, it could be the situation that despite the fact that we're putting in 30-some docks in the building, we get a low-impact user that only needs 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 30.
Or it could be the
Or 30.
opposite. Right,
So we don't know that scenario, but there's a prime example. The most recent building in your community that's 40 foot clear, that's a Class A building, that you want a Class A building in your community, and that's what Sterling Bay is doing. They're building a Class A, not a Class B, as Alderman Belzak, I believe you pronounced your name, asked the question last time. What's the difference between an A, B, and a C? If you build a lower clear height building, you will have a lower class building and a higher opportunity for vacancy because you reduce the amount of potential tenants and prospects for that building. So you build a lesser, inferior building, and therefore you reduce the pool of potential prospects.
But regardless, their building is 18% larger, and their maximum bays are that they have 12 to 22 bays. Right now it's at 12, but the maximum expansion's to 22. Where your starting point is the 31 docks that are, like I said, forward-facing, facing the residents of Darien that are on the other side of I-55.
And I believe we talked about they're not facing, they're facing the forest preserve and the wetlands.
Facing public work. I apologize. I had that point. I had my orientation wrong. So on that, I was wrong. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Just gonna, yeah.
Mayor,
yes.
I just wanted to clarify, Alderman MacGyver mentioned the site plan. Our code requires a site plan approval, really as a check and balance against the work the staff's review. The site plan that was before you tonight, independent of the height variance, meets all of our criteria. So if the city council doesn't like something about the site plan, I just want everybody to understand the site plan meets all of our codes. And I think, again, that's important because I don't want to say, I don't want the alderman to, again, base something on the site plan. I want everybody just to understand that part of what's before the council, again, is meeting our code requirements. Even if there was not the variance request, we would bring that forward. And again, what that allows is the council really to double check and verify that everything is in compliance with our code.
So on the code piece with the number of bays, how do we calculate that that's in compliance?
I don't know.
We really don't. I mean,
number of bays is not a zoning regulated issue. It's setbacks. It's
part of business. It's a part of business plan that the developer gets to bring in. He's adhered to the setbacks, for example, the plantings, above and beyond the plantings, the lighting scheme, the lighting schematics, the traffic patterns. When I say traffic patterns, write-ins, write-outs, whatever the case is. In this case, it's not a write-out. I know there's no, signage, certain things that need to be repaved. Public utilities are to be put in a fashion that will serve all in the future.
Nothing on emissions, nothing like that.
No.
Nothing on noise and emission.
No.
I just wanted to understand that. Thank you.
Just want to make a quick comment. For me, it comes down to the views. You guys are developers in Chicago, whether it's the Google building or the new McDonald's building, correct? I have friends that live down there. If you have an apartment or a condo on a 5th floor, and you have a beautiful view over, say, Randolph Street or Green Street, but then
Alderman Klistic, that's not the issue this evening. The use.
No, the variance.
The variance. I'm talking about the variance.
He's talking about the height.
Yeah, I'm talking about the height.
Oh, the height. I thought you were talking about the use.
No, I'm talking about the height. So if you buy a piece of property in downtown Chicago and your realtor tells you, hey, I'm on the 5th floor, nothing's going to be built right there in the 4th floor. But then all of a sudden someone comes in, gets that variance, gets it to 6th or 7th floor. Does it or does it not affect your views? And that's what we're arguing here. I work in Frankfurt. I go past old facilities at 355 and I-55, and I see the new ones that are 40 foot. For me, it blocks the views that I have of the forest. There's other forests going down 355 as well down there. Growing up as a kid, my parents, grandparents would take me for a ride. I think we're assuming that people that enjoy Waterfall Glen are only those that get out of their car and walk. They're people that drive past it. 100,000 cars every single day drive past it that enjoy the view. That's relaxing. That's something that they see. And by changing this 4 foot, you do affect that view. As I made an example downtown Chicago, if someone changes an ordinance of a building downtown, it will affect different views. So, we're zoned a certain way for that reason, and that's why I do not support this variance.
Alderman Belzic.
Just before we vote, I would like Attorney Murphy to clarify that the guidelines that are set up for the variance are for the variance, not for the use of the property. And I think there may have been some confusion based on some of the statements made or questions said. So if it says it's going to change the use of the property, we're comparing a 35-foot warehouse to a 39-foot warehouse, saying whether it's going to change it. That's the determination we're making, correct?
That's correct, not the more generic things about traffic, because this is a permitted use.
Right.
If there are no other questions from the council, then the roll, please.
Belzak.
Aye.
Shower.
Aye.
Clistic.
Nay.
Kenny.
Nay.
Marquez.
Aye.
McIver.
Nay.
Vaughn.
Nay.
3 ayes and 4 nays.
The motion has failed. Let's move on to questions, comments, and announcements of a general nature. Do any of the aldermen have, the only comments I wanted to make was, and I'm just piggybacking on what Alderman Marquez said and Administrator Vanna. It's been a difficult subject, especially when we see all of the misinformation that went out regarding the project, and then to be told that we're hiding things, we're doing things behind closed doors, that we don't share information. It's very disheartening to hear all of that, because we work so hard at making sure we get out all information on all issues. And I hope you understand that, or come to understand that what we've done here through this whole process is the transparency that the City of Darien provides every day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements?
Just a quick reminder to our residents, we will be having our award for garage sale coming up this weekend, Saturday, starting at 9 a.m.
And Darien Fest, right?
Darien Fest this
That's
weekend.
right. Darien Fest is coming up this coming Friday, September 7th through the 9th at Darien Community Park.
And Brian, did you say that somebody would be there to register voters, like people that are interested in voting? I thought you did.
Well, there's already, the local political organizations typically attend.
Excuse me, could you keep it down,
and
please?
in talking with April of the Chamber, one of those organizations will be there, and typically they are able, or they do register people to vote.
Okay, just so that's an
it was a bit of a shock to get the application to have a booth.
Think that, that was an error. April didn't realize it was coming from the city necessarily as a public, as a kind of a public service. She thought it was more of some private entity. So
or
she
something
actually
political.
apologized, and I was supposed to pass that on.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so an opportunity, people should remember to register to vote. There's elections coming up in the fall and the spring, so just...
Okay. All right. If there's nothing else to discuss, do I have a motion to adjourn? Alderman McIver, seconded by Alderman Vaughn. All in favor?
Aye.
Turning the microphones off.
No.